Hello, this is cjhoyle. Today is Saturday, October the 16th, 2021, and today I'm riding my bike here on Yonge Street. And in this video I'm going to give a narrated tour of the Mount Pleasant Cemetery, which has its entrance just to the right of here. So I'll make my way inside of this large cemetery in the middle of Toronto. And I'm going to be doing a big loop around the cemetery, starting from this end. So the Mount Pleasant Cemetery first opened in 1876. And it was among the non-denominational cemeteries, which are kind of rare at that point. In the early years of the city of Toronto, or the town of York as it was originally known. The cemeteries that were located within the city proper were limited to only people who were members of various different churches. So if you didn't belong to one of those churches, or if you had committed certain crimes or things like that that would have prevented you from being buried in these church cemeteries, you had to be buried somewhere away from Toronto. And there were a couple of cemeteries that came before this one, but this was the first big cemetery that was built to address the need. You can see on the left here we're passing some very giant monuments that have been built for some, I'm assuming, very rich people that were buried here. Over here on the left there's an exit, or an entrance I guess, into the cemetery, which goes over to the Beltline Trail. And in this video I'm going to be highlighting a number of the different entrances and exits that will be passing along the way. There are quite a few, as this is quite a large cemetery. This is a place that I've been looking forward to making a video about for quite a long time. And I felt that with the fall colors fully in at their peak, I figured this was a good time of year to make this video, so be sure to admire all the vibrant yellows and reds that we'll be seeing among the trees along here right now. I happen to mention that just as we're going through a section that has a lot of green, but I know we did pass a very vibrant red maple tree back a little ways. And today things have cooled down a little bit. Last weekend I was riding my bike and I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt and I was feeling pretty warm, like I was sweating quite a bit. This weekend I'm wearing the same attire, but I'm definitely not sweating. I'm kind of feeling like, you know, a long sleeve shirt may have been a better choice for today. I do have a jacket with me though, just in case, that I can put on if necessary. So right now we're heading in the east direction, kind of following along the northern side of the cemetery. And the cemetery spans all the way from where we started on Yonge Street all the way east to Bayview Avenue. And I'm just going to curve over here to the left. Got some speed bumps to go over. So we come down this little bit of a hill, and there's actually a bridge that we'll be riding underneath of. And that's the bridge for Mount Pleasant Road. But before we go underneath of this bridge, I'll just point out that there's another entrance here on the left to the Beltline Trail. It's basically where the K Gardner Beltline Trail ends. And the Beltline Trail is actually built on the former bed of the railway. And this bridge that we're going underneath of here, it actually has its own little section where the railway used to go through, because the railway actually came through the cemetery originally. But yeah, so Mount Pleasant Road, that was not originally here when this cemetery was first built in 1876. It didn't get completed until 1919, several years later, and they basically they took a chunk out of the middle of the cemetery and they allowed a road to be built there for the city as the city was being expanded. Straight ahead you can see a mausoleum, basically like an apartment building for cemetery monuments. And so we'll continue our way heading in the east direction. So I imagine when they built Mount Pleasant Road, they would have had to have moved some of the cemetery plots to accommodate for it, because it's quite a wide road that just cuts right through the middle of the cemetery, and I can't imagine that they just had that land sitting there vacant. So I'm filming this at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday, and the weather forecast for today was calling for rain. It looked like it was supposed to be raining for most of the day, but when I woke up this morning it wasn't raining at all, and I started thinking that maybe I should go and film this video in the morning. So I got everything ready to go, and I was out on my bike heading my way up this way, and just as I was leaving it was just starting spitting. So the rain was coming down and I thought, oh, I guess if there's going to rain now then I probably shouldn't make the video, because it's a little bit hard where there's raindrops on the camera to make a good video, because you can wipe it off as frequently as you want, but it's never frequent enough for the viewer at home. So I turned around and I actually went and ran an errand on my bike, and then I came back home, and then later this afternoon when that rain stopped, I'm now back out here again and filming that video that I was planning on. You can actually see quite a few cars up ahead here, which means maybe there's a funeral going on right now. Yeah, I would definitely say that's what's happening here. I was reading that the cemetery has approximately 180,000 people that are buried here. And that might seem like kind of a large number, but considering that the city of Toronto has a population of almost 3 million, it's really just a drop in the bucket. And I think this cemetery is probably gradually getting filled up. I don't know what the capacity is, but I know that they sort of expanded the cemetery in a way. Before I talk more about that, I'll just mention over here on the left is an exit from here over to Bayview Avenue. It's just for pedestrians though. Let me just keep going here. So yeah, what I was talking about for them expanding the cemetery is what they've done is they've taken some of the existing roadways, like the one that I'm on right now, and they've renaturalized it and changed it back into grass, and they've sold cemetery plots on those. So I know, for example, if you look at some maps of the cemetery, even digital ones like the one that Strava uses, there are some things that are shown on there that are shown as roads that are really actually just, there's no longer a road there. There's actual monuments and people buried along that path of that road. So I guess that's a way that they're being able to continue to sell cemetery plots here. So we did see that funeral earlier where there was people who were gathered there for that, but amongst the cemetery you see a lot of people who are likely not here to see any of the actual graves. A lot of people that live in Midtown Toronto use the Mount Pleasant Cemetery more like a park. You know, we saw back there parents with their kids riding bikes and people walking their dogs, and often you see quite a few people bike riding in here. It really functions, you know, a lot like a park. It's quite a nice place to come. It's got a lot of old, mature trees. Also quite a lot of really unique, unusual trees that are planted here. It's sort of like an arboretum. And so we just about got back to the point where Mount Pleasant Road is, but I'm just going to curve over here to the left, and I'll show you the exit from here out to Moore Avenue, which is where the Beltline Trail continues. Just over that way, there's an exit over there to the left on that pathway that I just passed. I'll just curve around back this way. But yeah, so the sort of unique thing about the trees here is they planted all kinds of, you know, foreign trees from other places. So you'll get to see trees that you won't necessarily see planted just on people's front lawns or anything like that, or in a forest. They're ones that were brought here. But the other neat thing is that they have a lot of the unique trees, or the bigger trees, have little identification placards on them to help you identify what they are. And I find that really sort of helpful and useful. Like, for instance, right ahead here, you can see that little brown thing on that tree, and the tag, a little bit hard to read, but it says thornless honey locust. That's definitely not a very common tree that most people would really be able to identify. Maybe this one over here is a better example. So you can see that little black tag on the tree, and probably a little bit hard for you to read on the camera, but I can read that it says white oak on it. So that helps you to be able to learn what a white oak looks like. And for me, that's just interesting because within the last year or so, I've been learning to identify trees. On the Toronto Islands, there's a tree tour where you can go to a website and it will sort of tell you all the trees to go and see, and it will tell you about each one and help you to be able to identify it. But the trees there are very sort of far apart, and only some of them are labeled, whereas here it seems like way more of them are labeled, and you can see more than one example of the same tree. So I've been enjoying doing that, and especially this time of year when the leaves are changing color, it's sort of neat to be able to identify what the different types of trees are. For instance, I think most Canadians, or most people from around the world, can probably identify what a maple leaf looks like, but can you identify the difference between a silver maple and a sugar maple, for instance? That's the sort of thing that I've been learning. So over here on the left, we're gonna make our way out of the exit to Mount Pleasant Road. So rather than going underneath of that bridge that I came underneath in the other direction, I'm actually going to cross Mount Pleasant Road here, just so we get a chance to see a little bit different scenery. So as you can see over here, there's quite a few cars that are coming, so I'll wait patiently for my turn before I cross here. And there's a nice clearing. In these situations, I always wait until there's a really wide clearing. I don't like to take any big risks. So we're back in the cemetery again, and now we're continuing our way, heading west. Essentially, once we got to Bayview, that's when we turned around and started coming back the other way. And on this leg of the journey, I'm kind of following along the south side of the cemetery. So the Mount Pleasant Cemetery is operated by the Mount Pleasant group of cemeteries. I'm pretty sure this was their first, but they now manage a total of 10 different cemeteries across Canada. I know at least one of them is in Toronto, one of the others. That's the Prospect Cemetery, which I made a video riding my bike through earlier this year. It was part of another video where I was riding on the York Beltline Trail. Prospect Cemetery is nearly as big as this one, but it's not exactly continuous because there are a number of roads that go through it, and you have to, you know, there's no tunnels underneath of them to get from one side to the other, the way that there is here. Now, when I was thinking about making this video, I had this idea that maybe I would come riding here at night after dark, and it would be a video that I could post on Halloween, because there's nothing as spooky as riding your bike through a cemetery in the pitch black of night. But unfortunately that plan didn't pan out because the cemetery closes at 6 p.m. at this time of year, and it's definitely not dark enough by then for it to be pitch black, so that plan didn't really materialize, but I figured, oh, let's just ride in it during the daylight instead. Now through here we're riding past a lot more of these big giant monuments that were obviously constructed for very wealthy people. One of the ones that we passed a little bit behind was for the Eaton family. Timothy Eaton is buried here. There were also two former Canadian prime ministers who were buried in the Mount Pleasant Cemetery. Mackenzie King is one of them, and the other one just died not that long ago. John Turner, who was prime minister for a much shorter amount of time than Mackenzie King. And yeah, there were quite a few other really notable people from Toronto history and Canadian history who are buried here. You can look those people up, and you can actually, on the Mount Pleasant Cemetery website, you can actually type in, all they need is the last name and the first initial, and they'll tell you where exactly, like they'll even put a pin on the map to show you where to go and look if you're trying to find somebody. I guess that might be kind of fairly standard practice for cemeteries, I'm not sure, but it definitely is a handy feature. Alright, so if I were to go straight here, that would take us back to the entrance from Yonge Street where we started, but I'm actually going to head over this way, and I'm going to head down the hill, and I'm going to end at one of the, I guess, the final entrance or exit that I haven't showed yet, which is one which goes down into a ravine. Now there's not really much of a trail at the end of it, but I guess it's sort of a dirt trail that goes down further, and you can follow it, but it's not really that great for riding a bike on unless you're riding a mountain bike. But I think there are actually some stairs along the way that, like I said, it's really not the most bike friendly, but I figured it was a good place to end the video, just to sort of show all of the entrances and exits into the Mount Pleasant Cemetery. So yeah, just at the end of this cul-de-sac, you can head down this little gravel trail here, and there's a gate, and it leads further onwards into the ravine system. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed joining me on this narrated tour today. If you watched all the way to the end of this video, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.